afternoon. It is so good to see Blessed Monday. I pray that you guys woke up feeling as joyful and as I do today. Give me 1 second. Let me get my moderators in here. I should have actually texted them before I went live. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. I have missed y'all YouTube. I have been extremely busy. I took a few days off just to create balance and just enjoy myself a little bit. But nevertheless, we are back and we are back at it. So as always, as you guys are coming in, go ahead and tell God thank you. And tell us one thing that you are grateful for. If you are catching this thing on the replay, y'all have really been fooling with these daily manners. Do me a favor and please hit the thumbs up button. I know it may seem like something that is insignificant, but go ahead and hit that thumbs up button as you guys are watching these videos, and hit that subscribe button. And one last thing, also, if you are catching this on the replay, please continue to hash that replay crew. I love getting those notifications when, you guys are actually watching from the replay. And so today I will say that I am grateful for joy. And I'm grateful for a greater depth of freedom. The thing that I've been loving about these daily manners, about even our lives on TikTok, is that it's like God has been taking us deeper, not only in faith, but deeper in terms of like what it actually means to be free. I feel like the closer and closer we get to God, the more we seek his face. It's like each day, it's like it will wow you. It will, show you ways that like you thought that you were living, but when you actually, make the shifts and change with God. And honestly, I feel like proximity to the Lord is something that changes who we are. Let me slow down because this is going to be a word. Get your edges together. Get your edges together. I'm going to say that again. Proximity to the Lord, it changes who you are, because it changes your perspective on how you're showing up in your life. And it makes you want to do things differently. And it makes you want to actually step into becoming the man or the woman that God has called for you to be. And so I feel like my journey, and I can only speak for myself, has been, that has been the epitome of what my journey has been. The more I walk with him, the more I am pursuing him. It is just changing, changing my viewpoint on life. And I'm going to just say this. I don't think that in some areas it's more so about changing, but I feel that like in other areas of my life where I've lost hope, that this season of my life has been about God saying, let me not change your perspective, but let me bring you back to like the woman that I've called you to be. He has been showing me over the course of the few days a lot of little ways that I have let the devil make it. I don't know if anybody else has like been having like a few days like this, but like the past few days, like especially yesterday and today, God has been showing me all of the little different ways that like I wasn't like operating in the fullness of who he's called me to be in. He was showing me all the little ways that like were little openings, little things that the devil did to keep me out of like my harvest, out of like, what we're going to call our inheritance. And so as you guys can see by the title, today's topic for our daily manna is stepping into your inheritance. One of the things that God has been dealing with me about heavily in this season is the spirit of people pleasing. My God, that just dropped as I'm talking to y'all, he is showing me things even more. But like one of the things that he's been dealing with me about in this season is people pleasing, and all of the many different things that I did, as a means of, keeping the peace, as a means of just not making life stressful, that, were indeed just me people pleasing, and it kept me bound in cycles. And so this weekend for me was one of those weekends where, like I said, I went out, I enjoyed myself, I allowed for myself to just embrace living life while I wait on God to do what I need him to do. And so yesterday was one of those days where I just rested. Let me back up. This morning, God was dealing with me about people pleasing and how it ties into us getting all that God has for us. The Lord told me that like chosen for anyone who views themselves as a chosen person, the devil's job is to trick you in more ways than one out of your inheritance, because the devil knows that not only does our inheritance bring freedom, but it also brings us to the end of generational strongholds, generational cycles, and other things that like we wrestle with. And so the Lord told me that for every single person who considers themselves to be chosen, who God has actually chosen, the devil's main objective and the main thing that he does to keep us bound is to tie us down to the spirit, or I can call it that, the spirit of people pleasing. Because if we're busy pleasing people, right? We are not gonna be operating in the fullness of who God created us to be, nor will we get the things that God has for us to get. I hope that that makes sense. This is why for many chosen people, like you think about like your childhood, and many of us come from like abusive or dysfunctional or both backgrounds. Give me some of these if you get what I'm saying. I'm going to say it again. This is why, like many of us come from abusive backgrounds, dysfunctional backgrounds, and some people that were chosen, you may have actually been bullied as a kid. Like when you think about it, like these are some of the things that like chosen people go through. You may not know that. A lot of times we don't know that we're chosen as we're younger. We just know that we're different. But these are some of the things that we go through. And so it's like the devil works. How can I say that, Holy Spirit? The devil works to get us into a place where, and I'm gonna get to the main point, but he works to get us into a place, even as young kids, not young adults, as children, to where we become more concerned about keeping the peace, more concerned about other people than we do on God. And so this is why many of us in our adulthood ages, and even as we're growing older and even growing in Christ, why people pleasing is really a thing that many of us wrestle with. Some of us don't say no to people, because we want to keep the peace, because we don't want to upset anybody. And the entire time we are suffering, we are struggling, and we are not tending to our own lives. And so I feel like there are so many different levels to people pleasing in itself. And so fast forward to yesterday. I rested on yesterday because I had fun this weekend. I had a blast. But I'm supposed to be planning like a Christmas gathering in December. And so I get a phone call as I'm just, going throughout my evening, washing my hair, getting prepared for the work week. And I get a call, and it's from my sister, and she's, like, oh, we going here, for our birthdays next year. And I'm just like, that is a whole year away. Like, well, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, how can you just plan somebody's day, or whatever the case, or somebody's day, or even how they gonna spend their birthday? You can't do that. But I didn't say anything. It was just like, oh, okay. Because in my mind, I'm like, let me just keep the peace, because I know how to tell you I'm not going. I did it this year. So fast forward, we're still talking, and I said something about like the Christmas gathering. And so her response was, for lack of a better word, I'm gonna tell y'all the revelation if I tell y'all what happened, was, oh, we need to start decorating like this weekend. And I'm just like, you do know that like it's October, like the Christmas party is not until like the first weekend in December. Why are we doing this? Like, no, I don't want to do that. And so there was a small moment of like her trying to convince me that, I'm waiting to the last minute. And it got to the point where God had me actually tell her out of my mouth, I don't want to walk around my house looking at Christmas decorations in October. I'm not doing it in October. It will be done, maybe middle of November when I choose to start putting up decorations. But I'm not doing it this early, and that just is what it is. And so she got upset in that moment. She got upset, and she's like, you know what? All right, bye. I'm like, okay. So I get off the phone, and God is asking me to like just talk about how I feel. And so I'm telling God, like, for a brief moment, like, it's like as long as people control you, sometimes people play nice. That's for somebody. And a lot of times that is the very dynamic that we go through as people pleasers, right? As long as, I'm doing what they want me to do, they're going to be nice. They're going to give me a false sense of validation, a false sense of being present in my life, a false sense of whatever it is that you feel you may be getting from a person. And what I didn't know is that, like, by me being like lackadaisical, and even though I didn't view it as I'm giving you control because I know what I'm going to do, The Lord told me because I wasn't actually being vocal, it was leaving room for the devil to annoy me along the way or even agitate me along the way. And so God was dealing with me about why I didn't just flat up right then and there say, I'm not going on that trip. I don't want to go to New Orleans. Why do you want to go to the same place two weekends in a row? But I was telling God, I said, Lord, even as a kid, and I'm gonna say this, the people who abuse you as a kid, the people who benefit off of you being a people pleaser, they oftentimes, although they may show or make you feel like they're changed people, a lot of times they are exactly who they were when you were a kid. That was one of the toughest lessons that I had to learn even as an adult. Okay, you get older, I'm growing, I'm changing, I'm evolving. And so, the person that made me a people pleaser, my birth mom, like getting older and like, I'm expecting because I grew, maybe you grew as well. And for a while I was putting myself in this vicious cycle where I'm going off of the hope that you've changed just like me. And it kept me in a cycle where, yeah, you would change for a little bit, but then it would go right back to what I went through as a kid. And so one day something happened and God just asked me, he says, I keep showing you who she is. Why do you keep expecting her to be somebody that she's not? And actually, that was something that I told God this weekend. Like, I see these people for exactly who they are. I'm just going to let people be exactly who they are, take it for what it is, and not hold on to any hope. I'm going somewhere with this. It's about to tie into like the inheritance thing. And so like I'm talking to God about it, and God is basically telling me like you're not speaking up. And so fast forward, till today, I wake up today, I'm feeling good, I'm going to work out. The Lord begins to deal with me about the Christmas party. I had a certain time that I wanted it to be done, but I allowed her to have it at the time she thought I should have the Christmas party. So the Lord said, you breaking free from this, it looks like you not letting the devil punk you through people. And that is one of the main ways that the devil keeps God's chosen people bound. If he can get you like attached to the spirit of people pleasing and operating from the spirit of people pleasing, a lot of times what you encounter are people bullying you. Even as an adult, it's like a spiritual bully. And even if you feel like, well, they can't make me do anything, when you think about it, why would you want to agitate yourself along the way? And so the Lord told me, he says, now I need you to, instead of cowering down because you don't want to rock the boat, because you don't want to do anything, he said, last night I showed you she's the same person. She's just playing nice as long as she gets to get what she wants. So, you need to actually at this point take authority. Me telling her, no, you're not coming to my house decorating anything. I don't want to do that. It's not going to get done. She got mad at that. Even today, I said, hey, push that party back to 7:30. I'm not going to be free at 6, and I don't want to have it that early. And she's like, oh, well, we thought that we were going to do this and this and this. I said, no, I'm working. I'm going to be busy. And 6 o'clock, I don't want to rush. I don't want to do that. And so she said that, she was going to change it. So I'm spending time with God. And the Lord told me this. He says, you doing little things like that, to you, they're little, but it actually causes a greater change, and a greater effect takes place on a spiritual level. The Lord told me, he says, as long as the devil is bullying you, through people or causing you to cower down, you are not operating, operating out of the confines of the power that I've given you. You're not standing on your throne as a chosen person. You're not standing on your post. When you cower, that is a form of saying, I'm not who God says I am, so I'm going to dwindle myself down to appease somebody else. The Lord asked me this question. He said, do you, if you continue to do that, do you think that you're worthy of getting all that I have for you? And he asked me another question. He says, you doing that, which he says, do you also think that it affects everything else that I've called you to do? And it's like in that moment, the Holy Spirit started to show me like different areas where, because I've allowed myself to allow certain relationships to make me cower, he began to show me like different areas of my life where I haven't been bold. And the number one thing that he told me is that he said, you doing that affects your confidence to be who I've called you to be. If you can't take authority with people, how can you take authority with the devil? I'm just letting it marinate. He said, if you take authority in this area with this person, how are you going to take authority when it revolves around the devil attacking you, when it revolves around your spiritual walk? You let people bully you, you're going to let the devil bully you. And then the Holy Spirit began to just show me many moments of me going through things and struggling, and instead of using the voice and the power that lies in our tongue to speak life over my situation, you know what God showed me? He showed me being quiet in those moments, not saying anything, just silently suffering. He said, look at all of these other areas of your life that you've put down because you have not been confident. He told me, like, me taking off this weekend to like actually go and enjoy myself was about restoring my confidence. And I'm going to say this. The Lord told me, he says, you cannot have faith without confidence. And so what the devil works to do in the lives of chosen people to prevent us from getting free, to prevent us from getting our inheritance, right, is he works to strip us at an early age from our confidence. When you think about a people pleaser, it is a person who who lacks the confidence in themselves, so they look for it, whatever that is, out of other people. And what they don't realize is that if you give that power to people, then you also are giving that power to the devil. Yeah. He said, you giving someone else the power to tell you what you're going to do, it is the equivalent of you letting the devil do that same thing. And he straight up asked me this morning, he says, are you not tired? Like, are you not tired of letting the devil punk you out of all the things that I have for you? He says, look, and he showed me like like in the very beginning of the wilderness. He said, you were a dreamer, but you've allowed the devil to strip your confidence to such a degree that you've been sitting on a lot of the ideas that I've given you. You've been sitting down and just letting the devil havoc in your life. He told me, he says, it's time to step out of survival mode. It's time to step out of the mode that you've been in. And it's time to give you your confidence back so that you can actually step into your rightful inheritance. He says people are dealing with people and breaking free from people pleasing. That is the lowest part of the totem. That is the easiest thing you will ever have to do. You do that, you put yourself in a position to where you can start fending for your own life spiritually in a better way. You can start speaking authority over things that you're currently believing God for. You can start, speaking life and actually moving on the things that God has chosen for you to live in. And I'm going to say this, you need confidence to get your promise. You need confidence to get your promise. Faith requires confidence. But if you're always focused on how a person perceives you, what they're going to say, or whatever the case may be, then that is going to translate to your own spiritual walk, where you will find yourself questioning every single decision that you make. Is this going to affect this? Is this going to affect this? And God told me, he said, stepping out of one pattern frees you from all of the patterns. And he told me this, he said, people pleasing really kept you more bound than you realized. You weren't just bound to people's opinions. You weren't just bound, to their happiness. You were also bound in your own spiritual walk, where you allowed yourself, okay, so how can I say this? In people pleasing, you worry a lot about how you doing what's best for you affects somebody else. In your spiritual walk, we begin to worry about the little details. How is this going to happen? And what about this? How is this? If I follow you, how is this going to affect this? And God told me, he says, many people are sitting in a place of rebellion by default. He said, many people are sitting in a place of rebellion by default. You've trained yourself to worry so much about the details. You've trained yourself to overthink. And I'm going to say this, sometimes it's not even us that have trained ourselves. We just, we just advance the training. It's the training starts when you're a kid. People train you to think about the details and blah, 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 blah. And then as you grow older, you start to train yourself to continue to operate that way. When we think about the process that God puts many of us in, it is to break up the way that we think, which is why many of us have outer body experiences as God is trying to lead us to freedom, as we are trying to walk by faith, because we have trained ourselves to operate a certain way. This is why faith is hard for a lot of people. And I'm going to say this. Faith is hard when you're a people pleaser. Yep. I'm going to say it again. Faith is hard when you're a people pleaser. Today, God told me, he said, make a choice. Make a choice. And even he was, can I flow? Can I flow? Can I flow? Can I just give it to y'all straight? And I'm gonna just say this. A lot of times the people that we are caught up in the cycle of people pleasing with, we know exactly how they operate. And a lot of times, when we're trying to get free, the devil will tempt us into a place of making excuses to still stay bound and not take authority. So my sister had been over like creating the flyers. Even in like whatever group it's in, she's still posting flyers of different events. But ask me, has she actually posted a flyer, an updated flyer for my event? You know what God told me? God said, the people pleaser in you would just wait for her to do it. But don't you also know how to do flyers? Don't you also know how to do it yourself? Do it yourself and post it in the group. If that is something that you genuinely want to do it yourself instead of waiting on her, and do it the way that you want it done. Yeah. Even like, I've seen this happen to me, even like in the confines of God saying, you need to separate from this person, or you need to separate from this person. Like the old me, the unhealed version of me would be like, oh, I'm just going to wait for them to, I'm going to wait for them to do it. I'm going to let them do it. When in all actuality, what God was asking me to do was to take authority over the direction of my own life. And the truth of the matter is that we all have a choice to take authority over our own lives, and even the direction that our life, that our day is going. And this is what is required to actually, this is what stepping into your inheritance actually looks like. God did not create us to be cowards. He did not create us. I'm going to say that again. God did not create us to be cowards. Somebody needs to hear that. God did not create us to be cowards. He did not create us to be fear-filled. He did not create us to be runners. He did not create us to do any of that. He has called us all to be sure. He has given us all. It is a gift, the gift of surety, to be sure not only of our relationship with him, but to be sure in all the things that he has us doing. If you believe that God has a plan for your life and he's given you a glimpse of that vision, then what God is calling us all to do in this season is to actually operate and actually own whatever that path is, whatever that journey is. Walk into it like you know what you're doing. Walk into it like, even if you don't know what you're doing, you know who has you on that path. And that was what God was sharing with me. You don't have to keep doing this. And really what it was all about was shutting the door on the devil. He said, you shut the door. These are all of the little ways, all of the little openings in your day-to-day life. These are all the things that have kept you bound. And so it's kind of like, you ever like seen like on those movies, this is finna sound real dramatic, this analogy, but have y'all ever like seen on those movies where like, you may have somebody hanging from a rope and, you can hear it, they be the real dramatic scenes where somebody's about to fall and they holding on to the rope. And it's like, you can, the screen may show the rope, the strings loosening up. And it's like as it gets closer to like the rope actually breaking, you actually start to see little strings, the fibers that actually make up the rope. This is about to blow somebody mind. Give me some fire emojis if you get what I'm saying. If y'all ever like notice it, like they show it, right before the rope breaks, what you start to see are all of the fibers of the rope like actually coming apart and unraveling. And before you know it, boom, they falling or whatever the case may be. A lot of times they save the person. But think about it from the confines of like our own life, and think about like it from the aspect of what it means and what it looks like to actually be bound, right? A rope is not just a rope, but a rope is made up of tiny fibers. And so when we actually start to actually heal, it's like God begins to cut the rope, and it's like the equivalent of that scene in the movie where the rope is about to break, and you start to feel the effects of not being as bound. You start to feel not as heavy, not as depleted, especially when you start to break free and you start to see the effects that breaking free and moving the way that you need to move brings you from people pleasing. And so eventually you get to a place where it's like just like the movie. It's just fibers. It's like little fibers. And so today is all about, cutting off, and fine tuning, your healing, really setting the stage to operate from a place of freedom, to really step into the fullness of who God has called you to be, so that you can get every single thing that God has for you to get. And so, that was what this was all about. Just God saying, let me just get rid of listen, you still got some fine hairs, some of these fine fibers that are still connecting you to people pleasing, that are still connecting you to the spirit of being a coward. Let me break that off of you so that you can finally be free and step into the fullness of what I have for you. And I feel like that it is the same for those of you guys that are viewing this message, whether you're viewing it today, whether you're viewing it tomorrow, whether you're viewing it 2 years from now. I feel like this is one of those words where it's just like, if you're watching this, it's God saying, hey, I know that you've been doing the work. I know that you've been breaking some stuff off of your life. I see the effort that you're putting in, but let me fine tune me. Let's make sure that we shut even the small little windows. It's kind of like, when a person is putting up like caulk, or, let's just say putting in a window window air conditioner, right? You may have like the little siding and stuff to fill in the gap, but you know what people do as an extra layer of protection? They go around where the little spaces are, and they put caulk in there, right? And the purpose of the caulk is to block it off from the elements of the wind, even bugs and insects that can get over onto the inside of your house. So when you think about it, the devil is like a roaring lion seeking whom he can devour. The Bible never said that the devil needs a large opening to affect us or to attack us. It said that he's looking for any opening, right? I hope that I'm making sense. He's like a roaring lion seeking whom he can devour. He don't just need a big space, but the devil is an opportunist. So even if he sees just a small little cracks, you think you healed, the devil will use it. Even if it can't stop you, he will use it to agitate you along the way. And so I say all of that to say, do the work, allow God to fine tune you in this season of your life. But most importantly, be unafraid of being unapologetically God's child. I'm going to say that again. Be unapologetic in you being God's child and operating from the freedom that he's given you, but also the authority that he has given every last single one of his children. That is how we get to a place where we're owning our inheritance, where we're able to receive our inheritance. Lacking confidence affects your identity. And if you do not know who you are, you cannot receive what God has for you. This was something that I read, it was written in a different way. But I want to say it was, who was it, Holy Spirit? I can't remember his name, but when I remember his name, but it was a pastor. He wrote something about identity and harvest. And he was so accurate in that. Apostle Matthew Stevenson, that was who it was. And that's just about giving honor where it's due. I read that it was in my wilderness, I want to say. And it's something that has always stuck with me. If the devil can get you to lack confidence, he can affect your identity. If he can affect your identity, he can prevent you or even delay you from getting your inheritance. And for many of us, that has been exactly where we've been. Small cracks in our armor, has been given the devil the opening that he needs to really delay the promises of God from materializing in our lives. I say all of this to say, seal the doors. Seal the little parts in your heart, the little parts in your life where the devil has been able to just gain access and do damage. Whether it's been small damage, damage is damage if you ask me. Whether you feel like it's been small damage or major damage. When I looked at me, like the small holes didn't just affect one thing. But when God just started to like just show me, it's like, oh, that kept me from pursuing that dream. That kept me from pursuing that. Lacking confidence made me not be a dreamer. It made me not have faith in certain areas. Like I want y'all to like really think about the effects of not having confidence. Think about the things that you haven't pursued because you lacked confidence in the little things. Think about all the things you have not believed God for because you've been lacking confidence even just for the day-to-day things. That's it. That is the word. That is the word. That's the word. That's the word. That is it. And so, yeah. If this has been your word, tell God thank you. Yeah. Tell God thank you. Yeah. 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 Seal the doors. Seal the doors. To those of you guys that feel led to sow, the number is 8 today. Whether you're sowing 8 cents, whether you're sowing $8, whether if 8 is too easy, sow 18. If 18 is too easy, sow 28. There is one person that needs to sow 28.88. That why that particular number I do not know, but there is one person that needs to sow 28.88. And there's one more who needs to sow 188. Whether that's the number that I hear. That's what I hear. I can't sugarcoat it. That's what I hear. But that's it, y'all. That is it. Is there anyone before I get off of here who needs to be sown for? There is one person that needs to sow $28.88, and there's one person that needs to sow $188. He said to say it the way that he's saying to say it. And so that is it. If you can sow for Visha, just type in on the screen, God is faithful. Or when you sow, you can just label it, God is faithful. Also, again, we still do have our Amazon wish list. I got to go back and add it to the description of this video. But if you can, we still have that Amazon wish list. And so I still think, I haven't checked it in a few days, but we still have some stuff on the list. And so if you would like to be a blessing to the ministry, you can sow into the ministry that way. It's just us trying to elevate our streaming experience on social media. And so that is it, you guys. I love y'all. I have 2 people that need to be sown for. I love y'all. I'm rooting for y'all. Also, if you're catching this on the replay, #replay crew, be sure that you hitting that thumbs up button. And so that is it. That is it. That is it. That is it. And so I love y'all. I'm rooting for you guys. We will be on TikTok tonight we'll be on TikTok tonight at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you have not already followed us over there, ThoughtsbyT is the name. At some point this week or next week, we're gonna start back doing our shirts and stuff like that. I feel like people really enjoyed like receiving shirts and stuff. And so be on the lookout for that. And possibly within the next month or two, I'm actually going to be releasing one of the books that God had me write. And so I'm very excited about that. And so that is it, y'all. I love y'all though. I'm rooting for you guys. And so also, if you need prayer, thoughtsbyt.com. Thank you, Mayana, for posting it. Is the way to do so. And so that is it, y'all. Be confident in this season. And, that is what I want to encourage you to label this seed, your seed of confidence, just a seed of confidence, for your own life. And so that is it. Again, I had 2 people that needed to be sown for. If you can sow for one or both, you can, add them, tell them God is faithful. Again, there was one person that needed to sow $28.88, and there was another person that needed to sow a $188 seed. Freedom is ours if we want it. Point blank, period. I'm going to say that again. Freedom is ours if we want it. Point blank, period. And so that is it. I love y'all. I'm rooting for you guys. And so I will see you guys on TikTok a little bit later on. Peace.